The Sandy and Toddcast is a MindgardenMedia podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. Ten seasons. This episode wraps the 10th season up.
Unbelievable. That's all I can say is unbelievable. 10 freaking seasons, Todd. 10 seasons. And we've actually been highlighting our first season on video, which is something we never did before. So wrapping up the 10th season, getting ready for the holiday season. It's going to be a good one.
We'll explain what that all means for you coming up in this episode. It's season 10, episode 8. It's a wrap, and it's next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
We make podcasting easy. MindgardenMedia can get you going on your very own podcast. With many years in the broadcast and audio industry, MindgardenMedia can edit, fully produce, and provide all the web distribution services. We're podcasters too, so we'll guide you every step of the way to a professional-sounding podcast production. For information, email the MindgardenMedia at gmail.com, the MindgardenMedia at gmail.com, or check us out on Facebook.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day, all while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome to the final episode of season 10 of the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we're going to wrap it up. We've been talking the last few weeks about our friends, the Warrens. So we'll talk a little bit about that. You had a nice experience last week with our friends from Apps, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But looking back, 10 seasons. Now, granted, and I don't remember when we changed this, but we went from like 13 or something like that to 8.
We were doing like 16
Was it
episodes
16?
in a season.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. I know me personally, like I need to have like a real stopping point because I felt like it was more structured if we went with less episodes in a season. Just as many episodes. We bring it to you every week, but just more structured. Then we could do more themes and more ideas along the same line instead of all crazy random everywhere.
Right. And so then what we're going to do between, because we're recording this and it's going to come out the weekend after Thanksgiving, and it's a hectic time for everybody. It's a hectic time for us. So we're going to take some time off between now and the new year.
Right.
And then, but in there, we'll have some special episodes for you out there as well. We might do an Empathecary. We might do a Sandy Cemetery. We might do a, who knows, right?
Yeah.
So we'll still do that, but we're going to take a little time off. And then during that time, we'll also be thinking about what to do for season 11. So
season 11. And if anybody has any ideas, please let us know. You can join our group on Facebook, which has really, really been active. And it's just a safe space, a great community for all of us who are weird to get together, share crazy memes, have a good time, discuss ideas and thoughts around metaphysical world, paranormal, anything you want. If you want advice on your grandchildren, come to us because we're all very non-judgmental and caring. And, stay weirdos, friends of the Sandy and Toddcast. I'll probably put up a poll in there at some point this next month to ask people what they would like to see us talk about next. And it should be a good holiday season, and it'll be a great kickoff to season 11, I'm sure, but with a few bonus episodes in there to boot.
All right. So that's that. Let's get right into this week's episode. Let's talk one more time about, and listen, we're going to talk about the Warrens forever. Like they'll come up in conversation for the rest of this podcast. So whether this podcast continues for one more season or 100 more seasons, we will talk about the Warrens until we're dead, basically.
There's so much controversy surrounding them. And these people, good or bad, no matter what happened in their personal lives, it's none of our business. And, they did do a lot of good for the paranormal community. And so the least thing we can do is to at least say the Warrens made significant contributions to the paranormal community and actually moved it forward in a time when nobody really wanted to talk about the paranormal. Nobody really had any idea what it was or what was going on with it. There were very few what I would call pioneers, Todd, back in the day that actually made moves to move it forward a bit. Hans Holzer, the Warrens, certainly two of the big ones.
Right.
Two of the big ones. So I will say that whether you personally like the Warrens or not, they did make significant advances, contributions to the paranormal world. So with that being said, let's talk about a really quick case that most people know about. I remember, Todd, being a little kid, and my mother loves to tell this story. I used to have a Raggedy Ann doll that I loved. And you know me with dolls. I don't know where the Raggedy Ann doll came from because I hate dolls. And
probably your mom. Your mom did it, right? Probably.
Probably. And I had this little Raggedy Ann doll, and my parents took me to the state fair as little. And I lost my Raggedy Ann doll. And Syracuse was about an hour from us at the time. And so I was very little, and I must have left it somewhere there. And you got to remember, this was like the mid-'70s. We get all the way home, and I didn't have my Raggedy Annie doll. I was going crazy. Like, they couldn't shut me up. I was crying. I was miserable. My father actually drove all the way back to Syracuse to see if he could find and track down this doll for me. And he actually tracked down this doll for me.
Did he really?
They had it at like their security station or something.
Okay, hold on. Are you sure he didn't just go down to the toy store? Because you see these on the sitcoms from the 80s all the time where, somebody's hamster dies and then they try and replace the hamster with a fake one, right?
It really is highly possible, but I'm going to hold on to that story because I thought that was sweet. But that's my story. I was just obsessed with Raggedy Ann.
My sister Vicky had a Raggedy Ann doll, too. I think she did.
That was a big deal. Well, Vicky and I are about the same age, right?
She's older than us.
A little bit, not much. Don't make it sound like she's ancient.
She's up there.
But we most kids, most girls liked Raggedy Ann. It was just like a big deal back then. So we're going to talk about Annabelle the Doll, who is a very large Raggedy Ann doll. And she's an allegedly haunted Raggedy Ann doll housed in the now closed Occult Museum of the Paranormal Investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren. And she was moved there after supposed hauntings in 1970. A character based on the doll is one of the antagonists that appear in the Conjuring universe. So all of those Conjuring movies, one of them is about Annabelle the Doll.
There's a couple actually that are, and I have to tell you that the Annabelle movies in the Conjuring world are the worst ones they're just horrible. I don't find the doll scary. It reminds me of a Saturday Night Live skit. Like, I just don't find it scary. Like, okay, so like you're in the bedroom and the doll's out in the hallway and all of a sudden there's a fire on the stove. It's not spooky to me.
Don't you think that stuff like that isn't going to translate well? Because it's not an animate object. It's not like they just are placing the doll, right? Like the doll is in the circumstances. Like the doll's not getting up and walking around and moving.
Right. It's not like Chucky, right? Running around with a knife or something. This is just a doll laying there or whatever. I don't know. It just doesn't do anything for me.
That's a really hard movie to translate from a story into a movie because, again, like she's not doing anything. She's just there. Like the doll is just literally there.
I think the creepiest part of it is they throw the doll out And then it like ends up back in their house or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that you were like, oh God, that's kind of creepy, right? Other than that, fire on the stove, bad luck. I just get out of here with that shit.
I know. To me, that's not a good horror. Oh.
Give me ghosts, give me nuns walking, with red eyes. I'll watch that anytime. Don't go anywhere with that. And you still have to watch The Nun and that whole thing.
I know. I do. And I'm going to. I maybe while we're on break, I'm going to actually watch the movie.
Did you watch the Conjuring one when they're in England?
No, I haven't seen those. Like, I literally only saw the first Conjuring. I think I saw the second Conjuring.
So they go to, it's in England, and that's where the nun comes from, because there's a painting. Have you seen that?
The painting, I know about the painting, yes.
So you've seen that one.
I don't think I saw it. I honestly did not see that one. I know. And not to go down the rabbit hole, okay, but let's talk really quick about The Exorcist, The Believers. I didn't know this, but it's apparently coming to Peacock soon.
Okay. It didn't do well.
Okay, that's why I knew you'd know.
So my friend Tony, right, went to see it, and he said, it's not good. It's just not good.
And I trust Tony.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to watch it if it's free, but I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to watch the whole thing.
See, here's my issue with Sandy. She will watch something if it's free, but if it's really good, like The Conjuring 2, she won't see it. I mean,
it's not true.
Lorraine Warren is literally like hanging on by a thread, being pulled out of a home toward a tree that's trying to eat her, something like that in The Conjuring 2. And there's this nun that, and there's a name for the nun. What's the name of the nun? The V word, right? What is it? What's the name of the nun?
Vagina?
No.
Virgin?
No. No. Oh, no.
I don't know what you're talking about. You said the V word.
Well, there's let me look it up. Conjuring nun name. But
I have only seen the first
Valak, Valak. You know that.
Yeah, now I know what you're talking about. I didn't know what you meant at first.
Vagina?
I was like, what?
What? Yeah, there's a movie out called The Conjuring 2, and there's a nun in it with the name Vagina. Jesus Christ.
I didn't know what you were talking about. I only saw the first movie. I only saw the first one. I have a lot of. I'm going to do it over the holidays because we won't be recording.
Yeah, you say that. And
on a regular
we'll come
basis.
back after the holidays, and she'll be like, I didn't watch it. Instead, I watched 50 hours of YouTube videos of strings pulling fake stuff across a floor.
Listen. Screw you, Todd. No, I'm going to watch it because then we'll come back for season 11 and we'll talk about them.
All right.
So that'll be my homework assignment because
I'm good with that. Like, I think that could be our next season. We could take a step through each of the movies.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
Let's do that. We'll give our own little reviews. All right. So let's get back to Annabelle real quick. So according to the Warrens, a student nurse was given the Annabelle doll in 1971. They said that the doll behaved strangely and that a psychic medium told the student that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a deceased girl named Annabelle. The student and her roommate tried to accept and nurture the spirit-possessed doll, but the doll repeatedly exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. It was at this point that the Warrens say they were first contacted, moving the doll to their museum after pronouncing it demonically possessed. The doll remained in a glass box at the Warrens Occult Museum until the museum's closing. Now, Tony Spera, who is their son-in-law, they had one daughter, and she's married to Tony. He now has Annabelle. Now, I do know that Annabelle is literally kept in a glass box. He takes her around to different conferences like Paracons and different universities when he speaks and stuff. He will not let anyone touch this doll. And again, we don't know for sure whether it's for show or it's legit. I mean, there's no way of really knowing. But He won't let anybody touch it. He's the only one that can touch the doll. He wears gloves when he touches the doll. I do know that our favorite fake ghost hunter, Zach Baggins, has actually, I think he was given permission to touch the doll. I think he's like one of the only people that Tony ever gave permission to. And
probably with the hopes that he'd get something and die.
I know, right? But apparently they did put some equipment next to her and it did go off. I can't remember exactly what the issue there was.
Here's my thing. If you're going to go to let's say you're going to a Paracon and this doll is going to be there. Are you going?
Yeah. Am I going?
Yeah. Are you going to go? Because here's my point. Let's say it's not true. Okay. Let's say it's not a haunted doll, whatever. Let's say it is. Let's say they showed up with literally the devil in a box. Would you go to see it or would you avoid it for fear of something happening?
That really is a great question. I guess my curiosity would probably get the most of me. I don't think I'd get really close to it. Because you don't know. You don't know. I mean, but again, having been someone who's experienced some pretty heavy stuff, I do know that it's possible. I know it's a possibility. I do believe that maybe spirits are drawn to dolls because they are essentially, I don't know if vessels is really the right word to be using, but I do think that there's a possibility of the fact that they can inhabit them, but there's a possibility they could inhabit anything.
It could be a chest of drawers.
It could be anything. I don't know either way what's possible and what's not. I think my curiosity would get the best of me. Would I go right up to it? Probably not. Probably just kind of check it out and that's about it. But I don't like the idea of dolls to begin with, and that's probably why they've always creeped me out. So I don't know. Is Annabelle really possessed? Is she not possessed? Why wouldn't they try to get rid of the spirit possessing her? Or did they? I don't know that full story there, if they've tried and they can't. Or why would you just put the doll in a box? Why wouldn't you try to exorcise it? I don't know. I will say that when I was looking through some of the research on it, Texas State University assistant professor of religious studies, Joseph Laycock, says most skeptics have dismissed the Warrens Museum as, quote, full of off-the-shelf Halloween junk, dolls and toys, books you could buy at any bookstore, unquote. Laycock calls the Annabelle legend an interesting case study in the relationship between pop culture and paranormal folklore, and speculates that the demonic doll trope popularized by films like Child's Play, Dolly Dearest. I never heard of that one.
Neither.
And The Conjuring likely emerged from early legends surrounding Robert the Doll. I think most of us have heard about Robert.
I don't think I have.
Doll. Robert the Doll is in Key West. There is actually a documentary on Robert the Doll.
See what I'm saying,
Discovery
folks?
Plus.
She'll watch that, but she won't see The Conjuring.
I'm gonna watch it. Oh my God. So but Robert the Doll is down in Key West, and there's a whole story surrounding Robert the Doll. And it's interesting because I believe he's on display down still in Key West at their museum, maybe. Maybe Zach Baggins has him. I can't remember.
Christ.
But I know. Maybe we'll have to talk about Robert the Doll at some point, because it is a very interesting story. And when you go up to Robert the Doll to see him in the museum, you are supposed to do several things. You're supposed to greet him. You're supposed to be kind to him, do this, do that. show him respect, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't, the quote unquote legend has it that bad things will happen to you. It is an interesting story.
I've got him. I've got a picture of him up here. So the doll is actually very crudely made.
Mm-hmm.
The doll is wearing kind of like a sailor's uniform.
Yeah.
And has a little dog that it's holding. It looks really cute. It does not look evil.
No, but apparently it is pretty evil, according to the stories surrounding it. Maybe I'll do an extra. We'll do a little extra content on it, because that would be something that would be fun to talk about, because that's an interesting story. It goes all the way back to, I believe, the turn of the century, like the 1900s, 18 to 1900s, turn of the century.
Why don't we just make this our next season? We'll do cursed items, and we'll choose 8. We'll talk about them.
That's pretty cool. I think that's neat. We should do something. We'll do something like that then.
Okay.
We have we're coming up here. We're kind of like talking it out now. We're coming up with some good stuff for the next couple of seasons, probably. Oh, and it says here, it's all some of the stories that the Warrens do can seem to revolve around a Twilight Zone episode released 5 years prior to the Warrens' story of Annabelle, entitled Living Doll, in which the character of the mother is named Annabelle. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Laycock suggests that the idea of demonically possessed dolls allows modern demonologists to find supernatural evil in the most banal and domestic of places. Commenting on publicity, I can't speak today, publicity for the Warrens Occult Museum coinciding with the film release of The Conjuring, science writer Sharon Hill said that many of the myths and legends surrounding the Warrens have, quote, seemingly been of their own doing, unquote, and that many people may have difficulty separating the Warrens from their Hollywood portrayal. Hill criticized sensational press coverage of the Warrens Occult Museum and its Annabelle doll. She said, like real-life Ed Warren, real-life Annabelle is actually far less impressive, unquote. Of the supernatural claims made about Annabelle by Ed Warren, Hill said, we have nothing but Ed's word for this, and also for the history and origins of the objects in the museum. So you're right. There were actually 3 Annabelle movies. Annabelle, 2014. Annabelle Creation, 2017, and Annabelle Comes Home in 2019. And I can't even imagine watching one of them. I don't want to watch any of them because I'm sure it sucks.
I really like the Conjuring franchise, but I cannot get into that wing of it at all.
It's just, the Annabelle story really doesn't, I think of all of the ones that they've done, that one probably is like the least believable for me personally. I think that, now we did the Smurl haunting a couple weeks ago. I don't know that there was necessarily anything demonic in there, but I do know that I'm pretty sure that there was something going on in there. There was a pretty severe haunting going on in that house. But I don't know that it was necessarily demonic. And, one thing I will say, I guess in defense of the Warrens, maybe not, is that they weren't putting a gun to anyone's head and saying, come to my museum. They were taking these things away from people, right? And they were putting them somewhere and opened a museum around it. Yes, you had to pay, I think it was like $15 or something to go. But like we said before, they still had to make money. If I could make money, I think you said this, if I could make money on paranormal investigating all the time, I would be paranormal investigating all the time. But you can't.
A lot of these people who do these paranormal shows, they don't make a lot of money for being on TV. The reason why networks get behind them is because they're relatively inexpensive to make.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But what they can make some money on is showing up at Paracons. Amy Bruni has her own company that does events and stuff like that. She tours once a year right before the holidays and does a bunch of shows where all she does is tell stories. So these people, are making a living on it.
Right.
I just don't know that there's anything wrong with it. And certainly if I could make money on it and talk about my experiences. In fact, this past fall, I almost did that before the place that I was going to do it at closed down. I was going to do like a ghost stories night and talk about my experiences and charge everybody $20 to get in.
Right.
And if I got 10 people, that's $200 for a couple of hours of my time.
That you enjoy.
Right.
That is meaningful for you, that you like to do.
That makes me money. Again, the money is the bottom line here. If I can make money, I'm doing it.
Exactly. I'm so passionate about the paranormal and investigating and learning and sharing but I can't make any money doing that.
Right. Well, we could.
So we could, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's a lot of work.
It is. So I'll just keep my job. And I'll enjoy what I'm doing on the side, but I'm certainly not going to hold it against anyone who makes it their life's work for wanting to put food on their table. Does it necessarily mean that you're a shyster?
No.
Now I sound like I'm 85.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Are you necessarily lying because you're getting money for what you're doing? I don't believe so. So one thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up our Warrens series is that this was kind of neat, and I haven't had a chance to tell you about it yet. Everybody knows I took the Ryan Buell webinar series recently, and I really liked it. And Ryan was very close to Lorraine. She mentored him. She came to a lot of his investigations, and she helped them through things. She taught them a lot about how to investigate and how to look at things in a more emotional way, and not just scientifically. And if you watch Paranormal State, you can see the effect that she had on them in that a lot of their stuff is personal experience and history based, as opposed to just scientific. Now, they use some scientific equipment in that show, but a lot of it is centered around personal experience and history and putting the big picture together, which I actually applaud because that's how I like to do. I think that's the only way you can do a well-rounded investigation is to use both personal experience and also scientific equipment. And Dave and I started to watch a presentation done by a paranormal group the other night on a Zoom presentation that they did an investigation for a historical society near where I went to high school. And so they were a great team. They're very thorough. They were very professional. And one thing that the gentleman who was giving the presentation said was that they are purely scientific. They don't use mediums, and I respect their methods. However, I feel like when you investigate, you have to go by gut feelings. You have to go by experiences. You have to go by a psychic, a medium, whatever you want. And science in order to have a full, well-rounded investigation. I just don't feel like you can really experience an investigation unless you're getting your information from both sides of that realm. I'm all about science. I'm all about the scientific equipment. I'm always buying scientific equipment, but I'm also I have psychic abilities. I'm like a psychic medium, empath medium, whatever you want to call me. I don't know what I am, officially, but I use the things that come to me to help guide the team that I'm with as far as where to go and where the hotspots are and where they can get stuff with the scientific equipment. I just don't feel like you're doing yourself or your clients justice sometimes by purely just relying on scientific equipment to investigate a location. I think you have to look at the whole story. So to get back to Ryan Buell and Lorraine Warren, he was very close to her and she taught him a lot. And so he mentioned her quite often in this webinar series. The second 2 of the 4 classes were actually about demonology. And I was pretty excited the other day to find out that he will be doing several webinars in the coming year. And one of them is a 2-part series on Lorraine Warren and what she taught him and the experiences that they had and all of that good stuff. And the kicker was, I was so excited about this. You could buy like a membership, I guess you would say, like a whole year's worth of all of his webinars, all of his online stuff for like $125, as opposed to paying, $75 for this one, $85 for that one, $50. You could just pay $125 and get everything. And then in February or March, he lives in in the San Antonio area of Texas. He's going to do sort of an event down there, and you can go to that for free. And I, of course, will not be going to that. But I just thought for $125, I think that's really cool.
So why wouldn't you go to the event?
Because I just wouldn't be able to get on a plane and go to San Antonio, Texas.
Why? You get on a plane and go a lot of places.
Oh, I know, but it's just not something that I could do. I don't want to travel by myself either. Like, I don't like that idea of traveling by myself. That's a whole other podcast episode.
Take your husband with you.
I know, but we don't have anybody to watch Spike for that long.
Oh, I see. Yes.
We don't have anybody to watch Spike for that long. So it's like leaving your 3-year-old, and I don't want to travel I don't like traveling by myself. So anyways, but for $100, and plus you get a signed DVD, which I thought was pretty cool. I know.
Do they still make DVDs?
I know. So that's pretty cool.
Plus you get a signed, phonograph DVD. Record from 1918, whatever that.
I know, right? So that was pretty cool. So I bought a
signed
ticket.
DVD. What is this?
I bought myself a ticket.
2002.
So I get to,
Nothing.
And so I get to watch all the webinars now. So I thought that was really cool. So I'll be talking about those in the coming year. There's a bunch of them. There's like April, and then all throughout the year, like once a month, he's doing stuff.
And here's a prime example, right? So here's a guy, had the TV show, did events, not talking out of school, but did some pretty nasty stuff. He stole people's money and all that, and had a drug problem and all that kind of stuff, and swindled a lot of people, shystered a lot of people out of a lot of money at one point. Yeah. And now he's back. And
burned a lot of bridges.
Burned a lot of bridges, but people are willing to give him a second chance. And I think sometimes when people talk about the Warrens, it's like, well, maybe they did this or maybe they did that. But if we're all judged on like a handful of things that we do in our lives that we're not proud of,
right,
we're all screwed.
Well, and again, with the Warrens, they've done over 10,000 cases. We may know of I'm being generous, like 20 of them.
I was just going to say 20, right?
Right? And so we don't know. Imagine all the other good that they've done, just because they focus on a religious side of it. Again, just like I respect the team that focuses on the scientific side, I respect anybody who focuses on the religious side of it, because those are 2 parts of it. One can actually validate the other, but who's to say that what they were doing wasn't working, wasn't helping people, wasn't doing what it needed to do, just because every single one wasn't the Amityville house, or every single one wasn't the Conjuring house, or the devil made me do a case, or this or that. You know what? Everybody has people who can't stand them. We're all living in a world where other people don't like us for some reason. So it is what it is. But I just think a lot of times it's been very unfair to them. Nobody is 100% pure. We all have skeletons in our closet. We all have things going on. Does that mean that the rest of your life isn't legit? No, it doesn't. So anyways, that's our wrap up on the Warrens. I don't know if Annabelle is possessed, but I would check it out. I don't know that I would get that close to it.
And I don't know that possession is right for it, or if it's just that she has energy attached to her. Difference.
Exactly.
You know?
Like, we don't know. They're saying that it's intelligent energy. I don't know. I haven't experienced it, so I can't say one way or the other. You know, it's like the experiences that I've had, I have been fortunate enough to, most of them have been shared by other people. And so, you know, we can kind of talk about it and figure out where we stand on what's happened. I mean, we did an investigation in August for the show I was on, and literally there was an energy down there, and I'm just giving you a little tiny snapshot of what all happened because it was really crazy. And someday when the episode actually comes out, I'll be able to really fully talk about it. But we had an energy that was literally picking up objects. Okay. It was dematerializing these objects and hiding them, and then materializing them and throwing them across a room, at the wall, at a door, at the wall. I mean, the strength of that, the strength that it takes for an energy to be able to do something like that is just phenomenal. And I will tell you that that is something that I think about, because that is something I'm really glad that other people experienced with me, because Todd, like, it is something I'd never experienced before. The intelligence and the strength to be able to pick up objects. We're not talking feathers. We're talking jars. To pick them up and throw them with force against something. That's not something that you want to play around with all the time. And so I was really glad that I had other people there to experience that with me. So I think that, and we actually had equipment that corresponded with it, scientific equipment that corresponded with that event, those events. So I just feel like a well-rounded investigation needs both. It needs personal experiences, it needs scientific equipment, and it needs an understanding of the big picture of the situation. And because of that, using our experiences, the scientific equipment we used, and my psychic skills, abilities, whatever you want to call them, I think I've figured out what the situation is there. But I don't think I would be able to do that with just scientific equipment.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to do it with just my feelings and not scientific equipment. So, not to get off on that tangent, but, you know, I think investigations need to have really a well-rounded look at what's going on.
Also, I will just say this. If you're an investigator and you're unwilling to open your mind to ways of investigating that may not typically fit the way you investigate, whether that's a scientific tool, whether that's something like dowsing rods, whether that's a medium or a psychic, if you're unwilling to at least experience those things as possible ways to investigate, I think you're very close-minded. Mm-hmm. You're the type of investigator that hasn't thought about what ghosts, if you want to call them that, really are, what they could be. You know, is there any tie-in with UFOs and life from other planets? Is there a timeline thing that we're just not understanding? You know, is this dead people? Right? Is it just their energy that's left behind? Or if you've never thought about that stuff, or you're unwilling to see the religious side of things, or you're unwilling to, I think you're just really closed-minded and need to open up a little bit.
I 150% agree with you on that. And if you investigate, if you're a paranormal investigator, I think all of us personally should ask ourselves, why are we investigating? Why? What do we want to learn? Because if you just want to rely on the science of it, then it's not a very personal thing. For me, it's very personal. I want to know stories. I want to understand. I want to help if I can. If you are only investigating for the scientific side of it, then I feel like personally you are missing the point. You are missing the idea that there is more afterwards. And these are real people who once lived, good or bad, good mood spirits or bad mood spirits, peaceful spirits or spirits who throw jars across the room. There is a reason why they are there. There is a reason why they are doing what they are doing. And I think it is, at least to some extent, our duty, if we're going to enter into their realm, it is our duty to do right by them, to learn and to understand them, and not just rely on some lights and some buzzes that go off when they're around, because they're not there to do tricks for people. They want to communicate with you and they want to tell their stories. And this is just from my personal experience, but this is the way I look at it. If you investigate the paranormal and you don't rely on mediums or psychics or empaths to help you get a complete story, then if that's all you want to do is use scientific equipment, that's great. I respect that. But I just don't feel like you are getting the full picture, the full understanding. And if you're investigating, aren't you supposed to be investigating so that you can understand, that you can learn? Isn't that what it's really about? So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox again.
I was going to reach out my hand so that you had something to stabilize yourself as you came off the soapbox.
Well, it's so personal for me. It's so personal. And these are people who once lived. Maybe this is a good time to talk about last weekend. Dave didn't go. Dave actually stayed at the Airbnb with Spike so that I could go for the day. We traveled up to Saranac Lake, New York, for a metaphysical expo that our group, all of us, APS, Adirondack Park Paranormal Society, was sponsoring. Our Christina Bloom put the whole thing on. At this at the Saranac Hotel Saranac, and it was a small fair, but it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I met so many amazing people, and I got some really cool stuff, and I learned a lot this weekend. But one of the things that I was really excited to take part in was the gallery reading that Christina did.
Yeah.
And I haven't even told you this yet. And so what Christina does is it was a small room, so there weren't a ton of people. She was able to read everybody, do a reading for everybody. She stood up at the beginning. I had never been to one before. And what she does is she sends her energy out and accepts, and whoever the energy comes back from is who she'll go to next. So she went around the room, and no pun intended, but she was dead on with everybody. And she got to me, and
she went screaming from the room. No. Okay.
No. But at one point she asked me if I had anybody I wanted to connect with. And I just gave her my grandparents' first names. She had no idea who I was referring to. And if I get a little emotional. And so I gave her the names, and long story short, the things that she said to me, she said, I feel like, she goes, are they your parents? And I said, no, my grandparents. And she said, okay, because I feel like I'm getting like, they're telling me like parental. And I said, well, they basically raised me.
Right.
She said some other things that are personal that I knew right away. There was actually another psychic that I had interviewed maybe 5 or 6 years ago for a very short-lived podcast that I had done. And she actually told me that my grandparents were there and essentially said the same things Christina did, which I thought was pretty validating to me. And then she told me that my grandfather came forward and said a few things that I knew were things that he would have said to me.
Right.
It was very emotional for me. And I asked about my friend who had I gave her the name of my friend who had passed away a year and a half ago. And she said, he's off to the side. Like he doesn't feel like he's ready to come through me to talk to you. Is it newer? And I said, yeah, just about a year and a half. And it was so personal and so right on. And these were things that if somebody's cold reading you, they're not going to know.
Yeah.
And it was funny though, Todd, because being the empath that I am and being the medium that I am, psychic, whatever I am, as she's going around and reading everybody else, I'm crying because I'm picking it up. I'm feeling it in the room. And it was just an experience that I will never forget. And if anybody gets a chance to do a gallery reading, I highly suggest it. It made me want to do an even more in-depth reading because I felt like she had it like right there. It's a very emotional hour. So anyways, I also learned a couple things that I want to share with everybody because I thought it was super, super interesting. There was a great girl named Jen who I will put in the notes her Facebook page because she's so cool. And she taught me a little bit about a couple of things. I was drawn to, those resin pyramids that you can get, Todd?
I think so.
Have you ever seen those? They're like made of resin, but they have the crystals inside them and everything.
Yep.
I've always looked at them. Now, when we were in Door County and we went to that crystal store, do you remember that?
Yep.
Where was it? Fish Creek?
One of the places. Yeah, something.
I think it was Fish Creek because it was after we had lunch. And I bought a beautiful crystal quartz sphere that I still have. I have the whole thing. And I've always been fascinated with the different shapes and stuff. And so these are pyramids. And she said, oh, and I was pulled to this like pink one. It was so pretty. And she said, oh, this one has, I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, Anchi crystals in it. She said, and I didn't know a lot about these crystals. They were a trade with another dealer. We traded because she needed some stones that she didn't have. And so she gave these to me. She said, and I looked them up and Anchi crystals, I'll read to you what they are. Anchi crystals come to us from the beginning of time as a rare offering from the earth. Anchi crystals hold the codes, wisdom, and alignments of the original plan. They are capable of enhancing one's ability to live in an optimum state. And it says Anchi, which is the field around Anchi crystals, quickly addresses your energy patterns and flows, your electrical fields, and other aspects to create cohesiveness or wholeness simply by being within close proximity to them. Anchi does not require focus or meditation. Anchi soothes and smooths out the effects of stress and reinstates your naturally ordained electromagnetic fields. When you operate in cohesiveness, you have more productivity and a greater sense of well-being. So as I looked this up a little bit more, so I bought it because it's beautiful.
Of course.
And as I looked it up a little bit more, I read that a lot of people put Anchi next to their bed at night. Now, she said that this can work up to like the size can work up to like 185 feet in conjunction with the next thing that I learned, tensor fields. And I'm like, what the heck is a tensor field? So she had these copper rings that she had me check out. And it was really neat because she's like, okay, there's different sizes, there's different frequencies. They're tuned to certain frequencies. And each one can help in a bigger way for different things. And she said, now put your hand through this. And as soon as I put my hand through this ring, like I literally could feel it. Like you can literally feel this. It's like megahertz. It's almost like a vibration. And I put my hand through it. And there's some that are so big and expensive, but so big that they're like made into like pyramids that you can sit under to meditate. There's large rings, like hula hoop size rings that you can sit in when you meditate. And she says, and they're attuned in a certain way to whatever the megahertz, whatever the needs are. And I'm like, okay, so let's see what they are. And when she explained it to me, it was a little confusing, but she actually put tensor rings in this pyramid that I bought. So a tensor ring is a superconductor that neutralizes magnetic fields. It brings tranquility and stability to chaos and very easily stabilizes the biomagnetic energy fields of the body. The tensor field produces a measurable Earth gravity effect. So it's very grounding. Tensor fields are very grounding. And you can buy some that are as little as like a ring that you can put on your finger, or they go up to, like I said, these huge pyramids that you can sit under. So what can you do with them? You can do, let's see, you can put a ring on the head, on your head if you suffer from headaches. In case of abdominal pain, you can place a ring on the stomach. If you have joint pain, you can put one over your painful joints. Let's see, you can meditate in a large ring. It makes it easier to come into meditation. Now, I had never heard of this before in my life, so I'm looking at her like, what the heck, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can put it under the pillow or under the bed for a better night's sleep. Now, remember that one because I have a quick story to tell about that. All kinds of things that you can do with these tensor rings. And again, they're supposed to be tuned, especially if there's like certain sizes, qubits they call them, and it has to be tuned according to the size, the qubits. And it's just fascinating when you read about it. And I'll let you guys, I'll put a link a little bit more about these because I know I'm not 100% explaining it. So then after I bought the pyramid, that's why she said it was good for about 185 feet. Then when I bought the pyramid, I looked down and I saw this beautiful pendant on a necklace, on a cord that was with a stone inside of a tensor ring that had been kind of molded to fit the stone. And I fell in love with it and I bought it. And so the stone that's in the middle, this is all stuff that I learned at a metaphysical expo for the first time ever. And it's absolutely fascinating. So the black azeztulite was the stone in the middle. And the black azeztulite is said to be the light within the darkness. And the quick explanation of it is it's a combination of quartz and black calcite found only in Vermont. Now, clear crystal azeztulite, there's, I guess, different kinds, is found throughout certain areas of the United States. But so far, they've only found the black in Vermont. The mystic lore around it, it says intuitive sources say black azeztulite embodies the power of light within darkness and is a stone of the midnight sun. Its powerful currents support the complete transformation of self and world. It cleanses one's energy field of attachments, implants, parasites, and karmic limitations. It supports healing of bodily self-attack. It aids in releasing emotional wounds and brings in unlimited spiritual light. So for someone who has never experienced these you might think that this sounds like a bunch of crazy woo-woo, which I was taking in as much information as I can. Now, I do believe in the power of crystals myself, but I was taking in a lot of information at that point and bought what called to me and came home and thought to myself, I had been suffering from some headaches recently. I think a lot of it was hormonal, but just headaches recently. And part of it also is that I share my bed every night with my husband and the dog, who seem to leave me 1/8 of the entire bed. And I wake up in a fetal position every morning. So that probably has something to do with it. But I thought to myself on Sunday night, I'm going to leave the pyramid under my bed. And, oh wait, I do have to back up. So Sunday I get home, I put on the necklace, and my headache disappears. And I take the necklace off I get in the shower, I take a bath to get in the shower and everything. And it starts to come back a little bit. And so I put the necklace back on, my headache goes away. That's when Sunday night I said, all right, I'm going to sleep with the pyramid under my bed. I woke up the next morning. I had slept well for the first time in weeks, and I had no headache. So I put the pyramid back in my studio, and I start to get a little bit of a headache, and I put on my necklace, and my headache goes away.
Wow.
And I'm like, what in God's name is going on right now? Can this actually be happening to me? All week long, I've been playing around with this a little bit. I still am getting some, you know how you kind of, Todd, sit on the edge of a headache sometimes?
Yeah.
I kind of get that a little bit here and there, but it's not like it was. And I'm thinking to myself, could this be really happening? Like, could these stones, could these tensor rings, could all of this stuff be actually balancing the energy in my body to help me deal with these headaches? I'm not having a pounding headache. I'm not having anything really bad. I don't know, but I have to tell you guys, it's kind of food for thought. Like, I don't know, but whatever I'm doing, I'm going to keep doing it because I have no idea. But tensor fields, Tensor, tensor rings, black as to light, and Anchi, Anchi crystals. If you get a few minutes, look that stuff up, kind of learn a little bit about it. I think it's interesting. It could just be coincidence, but I think it's a very strange coincidence if it's happening right at the time when I purchased these items and learned about them.
Yeah.
You know, so just overall an amazing weekend, and I really enjoyed it. And so, yeah, I learned a lot this weekend, too. So I know this was kind of a long episode, but wanted to fit everything in there. And yeah, so look it up. I'll put some links in the show notes for this week and just check it out just for the heck of it. And I'll put some pictures up in our group so everybody can see what I'm talking about.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm going to get you a tensor ring.
I was just going to ask you about that because you mentioned that prior.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get you one because I know you've been having problems with your knee still and everything. And so I think I'm going to get you one, and we'll see what happens if anything happens with it. It's always worth the shot. I agree.
There you
go.
All right. Should we go ahead and do our spiel?
Let's do it.
You can find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts, including YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. You can also join our group, Stay Weirdos, friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for more fun. Stay Weirdos is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and random inappropriate memes without judgment. Sandy and Todd also have a podcast called the Empathecary Podcast. It's for empaths, by empaths. And if you know an empath, you might want to listen too. Find and like the page on Facebook. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can also help with that too. MindgardenMedia is their latest project where the dynamic duo can guide you every step of the way in your podcasting journey. Editing, producing and consulting is what they do. Like MindgardenMedia on Facebook or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for staying weird.
Season 10 comes to a close.
Yes, and I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, no matter how you choose to celebrate or celebrate at all. I hope you have a wonderful next month. We'll be in and out with some bonus content for everybody to keep you busy, and we'll be back at the beginning of the year with season 11.
Sounds good to me. Until we talk to you next time, bye.
Bye.